Well, welcome everybody. My name is Rana. I'm Vice President of Research and Apologetics at Reasons to Believe, and I'm joined today by my friend and also a fellow scholar at Reasons to Believe, Ken Samples. And we have had the privilege of working collaboratively to write a book called Humans 2.0, which is a scientific, philosophical, and theological perspective on transhumanism. And so we want to welcome you to this live stream broadcast where we're going to talk a little bit about what people can expect when they get a copy of Humans 2.0. And by the way, just wanted to remind everybody watching this that for the month of July, if you go to our website at reasons.org for a donation of any amount, we would be happy to send you a copy of Humans 2.0 just as a way to say thank you for your support of our work here at Reasons to Believe. Ken, it was a privilege, as always, to work with you on any project, but particularly this project on transhumanism. And maybe people who are watching this know what transhumanism is, maybe they don't. What is transhumanism?
Yeah, it's a helpful thing to be able to define it because many people, it may be new. I would define transhumanism as kind of a cultural and intellectual movement that is really trying to transform the human condition, appealing to science and technology, particularly the areas of medical enhancements. So really to try to change the human condition. And in that way, I think the movement is both scientific and philosophical, even religious, if you will.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this idea of transhumanism, of course, is inexorably tied to technology development. And some people say that maybe the first expression of transhumanism goes back to the turn of the last century, a book written by J.B.S. Haldane called The Atlas,
right,
where he speculates on the emerging science of genetics and how maybe one day we can manipulate our genes and then make use of artificial wombs, to kind of take control of our own evolution. And of course, at that time, it was a projection of what people thought to be very distant science.
Yeah.
But this idea, picked up in the 1960s, but still it was always viewed as a fringe idea. But now it's become a mainstream idea, hasn't it?
Well, when I looked up the kinds of individuals that are kind of the core people behind transhumanism, I was struck by a couple things, Fuzz. Number one, how dedicated that they are to their world and life view, if you will. But also, you're talking about some very accomplished people in science, in technology. I even asked myself, am I as committed to my worldview as they seem to be committed to theirs? And so, you have that humanism in the transhumanism element. So it is a secular world and life view. But the key idea, and you've written quite a bit in our book on that, the areas of technology. And so I think that this is a very, very important topic. And I think the book's going to help a lot of people. I certainly hope so.
But, it's interesting because, again, it's always been kind of this fringe idea that seems more like science fiction or fun speculation than really anything that could be an encroaching reality. But it's amazing to me, in the last half decade, you have advances in gene editing, where you have things like CRISPR gene editing, which is a very powerful and very easy to use technique that's also relatively inexpensive, or incredible advances in computer brain interface technology that's suddenly giving a reality to this transhumanist vision. And so now people are looking at these advances as important biomedical breakthroughs, but also giving us the capacity to enhance ourselves beyond our biological limits, improving our intellectual and physical, even emotional well-being. And maybe using this technology to take control of our own evolution, evolving us into a technologically driven new set of species.
Yeah, it is no longer merely a fringe idea, merely science fiction. I mean, the scientific advancements appear to be there or growing or potentially available in the future. Fuzz, I was also struck as we were working through the book how everybody needs a not only a worldview, but a hope, a vision for the future. I mean, this kind of has an eschatology to it. It's futuristic. And that's the way human beings are. Human beings are desiring to kind of change their human condition and have hope for the future. So I think it's appropriate that we dealt with the science, the philosophy, and the theological implications as well.
Yeah, you raise an important point because, think about this. If you are a materialist,
Yeah.
you believe that all that constitutes reality is the physical material universe. And of course, with Darwin, he replaced essentially the Genesis 1 and 2 creation accounts with human evolution as the story of our origins. And of course, that worldview really shapes how humans view our place in the cosmos. But if you're a materialist, that really becomes a very depressing view of our place in the cosmos, because there is no ultimate destiny or significance to human beings. We're to quote one of our probably favorite groups from the 70s, Kansas, we're just dust in
the wind. Yeah.
Dust in the wind, right? And yet with transhumanism, suddenly there's a real hope, if you will, to a materialistic worldview. It suddenly gives us the hope that as individuals and as a human species, we actually have a destiny that goes beyond this physical material world in some respects, right?
Yeah. Well, again, the idea that you could change the human condition, that you could transform, put forward, the evolution of human beings. And then, of course, there is all this discussion about expanding lifespans, potentially taking consciousness and taking it away from the body and placing it on a computer. As scientific, as sci-fi as it sounds, there is a lot of reason to think that a lot of these enhancements may in fact be available in the near future.
Yeah. And of course, when you start thinking about this, this raises all kinds of questions, right? And so that's in part what motivated us to write the book.
Right.
But our audience was, in effect, a Christian audience.
Sure.
So we hope a non-believer could pick this up and find value in the book. We really were targeting a Christian audience when we wrote this book, with the goal of helping people to begin to learn how to think about transhumanism. What do you hope, as an author, that someone who is a Christian walks away from after reading this book?
Well, there's some really special parts of the book. You have, for example, a chapter on technology that I think was very insightful. Fuzz, what I hope Christians will appreciate is that this naturalist secular worldview now has kind of encompassed a new wrinkle. We call this transhumanism. There are, by the way, Christian transhumanists, but this is largely a secular movement. It is appealing just as people did in the past to kind of, a humanistic kind of element. But I'm hoping Christians will begin to appreciate some of the competing worldview ideas that are out there in our culture. We also spend a lot of time talking about the Christian view of human beings, a Christian perspective on the image of God, for example, and on what our realistic hope is in terms of Scripture. So I'm hoping it will not only help people to critique a challenging worldview, but it'll reinforce what Christians believe about hope and purpose and the future.
Yeah. Well, whether we like it or not, as Christians, we're going to have to somehow come to grips with transhumanism and the prospects of human enhancement technology. And, it's complex. Because to me, the technology in and of itself that's kind of fueling the transhumanism movement is actually technology that could be transformative in a very positive way. The biomedical use of that technology, treating people with genetic disorders, treating people that are quadriplegics, paraplegics, amputees, locked in, the list goes on and on. Who doesn't want to live longer and have a better quality of life? So these are really positive things that on one hand, we want to affirm as Christians, but
Yeah.
even in and of themselves, the biomedical application raises all kinds of ethical questions, let alone
Yeah.
how those ethical questions then become even more intense as we start thinking about them as enhancements. And so, one of the things we wanted to try to do in that book is to help Christians not condemn the technology,
Yeah.
but to recognize the positives and the limitations, to recognize the dangers in this technology, but to engage our culture well, where we can help our culture determine what is the best thing we should do when it comes to this technology. What should we develop? How should we develop it? How should we deploy it? And I think the Christian worldview uniquely has an ethical framework that can guide complex decision making.
And I think you point out something very important, Fuzz. I think maybe a unique element of our book, I mean, I've read other Christian writers who have critiqued it, and largely it is viewing it as a challenge, as a threat. Then there is, of course, other writers who see it as, just an exciting, futuristic life perspective. But I think we bring both elements to that. I mean, I think you did a really good job of pointing out where the realism is in, the science and technology, but how it can potentially help human beings. And then we also critiqued where it's a serious challenge. I mean, there is a real element of transhumanism that is a counterfeit gospel, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I think our book scores high in the realm of providing a real analysis, looking at the things that are potentially very good, but also raising the deep challenges. And ethics, I can only imagine the many issues that will be raised in the sphere of ethics when it comes to all these enhancement technologies.
Well, I remember reading a bioethicist who basically kind of threw up his hands and said, we just don't have categories right now to ethically process what's happening with human enhancements and transhumanism. And, our position in the book is, but we actually do have an ethical system.
Yeah.
It's not a new one, it's an old one,
Yeah.
and it's built around this idea of the image of God. And as I've reflected on the image of God concept over the years, I've come to appreciate that this is an incredibly powerful idea.
That's right.
Particularly when you apply it to science and technology, because it affirms technological advance. We're called to have dominion over our creation, and it also affirms the idea that we should promote human flourishing, and technology can do that. But it also puts in place a framework that says, but we always want to be careful to never exploit another human being. And I just don't know of any secular ethical system that offers that power other than one built around this image of God concept. So even if you're a non-believer, appropriating the idea that every human being has inherent worth and value, is a powerful idea that I think could really truly shape ethics. And I think we're drifting away from that.
A point you made in our many discussions on this topic is there's only about a handful of biblical passages, references that directly talk about the image of God. Now, they're very critical, particularly in the first chapter of Genesis, talks about human beings, male and female, being made in the image of God. But a point you've made that I think is really a powerful one, Fuzz, is that it seems that all of Scripture is written in the backdrop, if you will, of the image of God. And, I've thought about it philosophically, theologically, philosophically. It's very difficult to derive an ethical system that can give you inherent dignity and moral worth that doesn't have a direct connection to God. But it also has powerful implications in terms of Christianity. I mean, we're created in the image of God, and then one of the central teachings of the Bible is that God becomes man. Mm-hmm. And this, I think, is something that is so important to be able to present to people, to talk with them. And so I'm excited about the book. I think that there's going to be a lot of people who are STEM people who will appreciate the background. I also think that there are lots of people who have interests like I do in philosophy and theology that will get a lot out of the book.
Now, I mean, what do you think our hope is for how somebody who is a scientist, maybe who's not a believer even, what do you hope that someone like that would find of value or find of interest if they picked up this book?
Well, I think, Fuzz, that I think you've done a great job in looking at these complicated scientific and technological issues. I think it'll be very informative. I think somebody who has a math, science, medicine background, there's some really helpful chapters on various issues that I think will be very helpful to them. But I think that there is also a very powerful way of contrasting the different worldview ideas that stand behind them. And so, you mentioned gene editing. All kinds of things will be questioned morally and philosophically. I think it's going to be, a challenge for people to look at it from a worldview point of view. But I think coming up to speed with these issues that are going to continue, to be provocative. So I think STEM people will really enjoy the book. And as I mentioned, I think if you're interested in general philosophical apologetics, you're going to like it too, I hope.
Well, you mentioned earlier this idea of, transhumanism representing a counterfeit gospel.
Yeah.
And I think it actually is going to be perhaps one of the most significant competitors to the Christian gospel in the next several decades, because we're living in a world that's increasingly becoming secular.
Yeah.
And there's so much respect, rightfully so, that people extend towards scientists and technologists.
Sure.
To the point where people now equate largely science with truth.
Yeah.
And in that framework, it's natural, I think, then to turn to science and technology as the hope for our salvation of sorts, to extend our life expectancy, to attain a utopian type of reality, to overcome or conquer death. And so to me, I hope that if a scientist picks up the book or a technologist, they will be challenged, particularly if they're a non-believer, into how far can science and technology really go in terms of providing us with salvation.
Yeah.
And, we tried to also in the book to show some very interesting points of intersection between what Christianity offers as our eschatological hope and what science and technology can offer as our eschatological hope, with the idea that this could be a very powerful way for a Christian to know how to engage our culture with the gospel by finding those contact points between transhumanism and Christianity.
Fuzz, from a worldview point of view, if you embrace naturalism, that the material, physical universe is all there is, there are difficult issues you have to come to grips with. Is there no life after death? Is there no objective morality? Is there no ultimate purpose? And then comes transhumanism that says, wait a second, we're going to change that human condition, that human perspective. We may be able to extend life, maybe indefinitely. Some of the people propose that, but they also maybe we can solve some of these huge moral issues that really inflict people. And so it's kind of a humanism plus. It's taking it to a new level. And that's got to be very appealing to certain people. I've always thought one of the real turnoffs of naturalism is it's not livable. It's so deeply pessimistic. But now there's this new perspective, and so we kind of compare and contrast that with the Christian hope of the gospel.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to give the whole book away, of course, but it's. For me, it's been an honor to be able to collaborate with you on a project like this. And, I really think that this is an important topic that is dealing with ethics. It's dealing with the questions of origins. It's dealing with the question of destiny. And so if people are watching this and they're intrigued and they want to get a copy of Humans 2.0, They go to our website, reasons.org, and if, for a donation of any amount in the month of July,
Wow.
we'll send them a copy of Humans 2.0 as a thank you. One final question, Ken, because we had the privilege of working with 789, which is a company that designed the cover of our book, and of course our marketing team and our editorial team worked with 789 as we were developing the book cover. I'm just curious, what is your reaction to the book cover?
I have to say I'm very impressed with it. I love the image. I love that image of the hand that really kind of gripped me. And I also want to say that, working at RTB, it really is a team because we worked really hard to get the manuscript down. We had editors who tried to make it as readable as possible, and then this great cover that I think is going to be appealing. So I'm really excited about the cover.
Yeah, to me it just captured in an incredible way the intrigue and the questions that the provocative questions that surround transhumanism. But what I'm really encouraged by is that on the surface there are things that just seem to be frightening to us as but yet when you really begin to peel back the layers and kind of press into some of these challenging, frightening issues that we're confronted with in the world that we live in, so often it becomes evident just really how powerful the Christian worldview is and how the Christian worldview 2,000 years after the inception of Christianity can withstand even ideas like transhumanism, and in a way that offers a real appeal and real hope to people.
Yeah, well said. Very good.
Well, I just want to say thank you again for all of you who have watched this special broadcast. Ken and I very much appreciate the support that you provide for the work that we do here at Reasons to Believe. And I just want to again remind you that if you want to get a copy of Humans 2.0, all you have to do is go to our website, reasons.org, and for a donation of any amount in the month of July, we'll send you a copy just as a way to say thank you for your support and partnership with the work that we do here at Reasons to Believe. Without your help, there's no way that we could do things like produce resources like Humans 2.0. And I also want to let you know that sometime in the month of July, most likely, Ken and I will be back doing another live stream where we will give you a chance to ask us live questions about transhumanism, human enhancement technology, and how, as Christians, we can engage our culture well. So stay tuned for announcements as to when that is going to be. Hopefully that'll give you enough time to get a copy of the book and to read it and begin to think yourself about the transhumanism movement. And until then, I just want to say again, thank you for all of you who tuned in to watch this. We really, really very much appreciate your support of Reasons to Believe. God bless you in everything that you do. Looking forward to talking to you soon.